it's a new era. It's a new era. And I think when we look back at March 7th, as, trade deadline day, March 7th, 2025, I think that's going to be looked at either as an amazing day where it's like, when they win the cup in 2029 or 2030, and we're like, that was the day where this started. Or it could be the day we look back at and go, that was where they totally went the wrong direction. It's the day that things went to hell. They start to become a lottery team, or you have to end up trading Pasternak or something. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it's no matter what, March 7th is going to be a day we look back on with some very strong reaction. And I get that fans are pissed. I get it. Even the ones who wanted a rebuild or a retool. Carlo and Coyle are fan favorites. So is Frederick. Marchand is Marchand. Like, I didn't expect fans to be like, oh, good. Not every fan is going to see Marchand getting dealt or Coyle or Carlo getting dealt and going, oh, that's great. Like, they're getting futures. Like, they want those guys now. And I get that. I think Coyle and Carlo is more cut and dry. They sold high on those guys. They don't expect to be fully contending the next couple of years. I also think they wanted a different identity. I think trading Coyle for Mittelstadt is the right idea. And obviously you got more. You got a second rounder. You got Will Zellers. It's the right idea in going younger, going more skilled, going faster. And I think that's one thing when you look at these returns, at players that they got back, at prospects, at what they hope to do with these picks. They got younger. They're trying to get faster. They're trying to become more skilled. And they got a lot of centers. They got a lot of centers on Friday. Whether or not any of those are the number one guy are going to be, your future number one, that remains to be seen. But they got a lot of centers. And I just think, one criticism we had and one thing they really, really messed up on last offseason was we're going to get bigger and stronger and tougher, and we're going to out-Panthers the Panthers. And it didn't even last the half a season. It did last half a season, but not even a full season.
Felt like longer. It felt like 4 years the way this season's been going.
It did. And the reality is, you think even back to last year in the playoffs, they did not, the Bruins did not have the skill and the speed to compete with the true cup contenders. I mean, they beat up on the Leafs. They almost lost that series. People forget. And then against the Panthers, they were completely outmatched talent-wise. And this whole season, every team is faster than them. Every team was more skilled. And, I think that that's an indictment on them. And I think they realize that. Charlie Coyle's a great piece. And for a good Stanley Cup team, he's a great third-line center. And Brandon Carlo, nice top four defenseman. And I think that's great for a contending team. But were they going to move the needle? And I also think, you look at sports in general, and the Bruins seem to hold on to their middle tier guys like tight, really tight.
And I'm not saying that glue guys, right?
They love their glue guys. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. They've had a good culture for a long time, and Carlo and Coyle were great for that. But do you really need to have them for all that time and not win anything? Like, I do think that matters, and I don't blame them for dealing those guys. Marchand's a different case. I think people were expecting a big return on Brad Marchand. It's like, oh, well, if Brock Nelson got this, and I still think they did not get enough for Brad Marchand. I think there is a legitimate case to be made. And again, you get into no trade lists and things like that, but I think there is a legitimate case that you look at the Bruins and go, why did you just do what he wanted? Why did did you have better offers on the table from the Kings or the Vegas Golden Knights? Why did you just pick Florida? And obviously they did out of being kind to Brad Marchand and out of respect, because that's where he wanted to go. Now, there have been a lot of reports on the contract dispute. Obviously, Don Sweeney said there was a sizable gap on Friday. Elliot Friedman reported this morning, Monday morning, that he firmly believes Boston's offer to Marchand wasn't less than his current AAV of $6.125 million. Goes on to state he's certain his offer from Boston wasn't less than his current salary and wasn't being asked to take a pay cut either. So it sounds like the Bruins are kind of countering the Friedman report, or at least trying
with Friedman himself.
Yeah. Like just going both sides, or, they're in both of Friedman's ears. So again, I mean, if they weren't asking him to take a pay cut, clearly Brad Marchand thinks he's worth a lot more than what he's currently making, at least over the next couple of years. It sounds like term wasn't an issue. It sounds like 3 years was around what both sides were kind of cool with. and then we had the report over the weekend that Marchand wanted to meet them in the middle somewhere. He wanted to compromise, and the Bruins were not willing to budge. So it sounds like the Bruins were giving him a raise, but we're not going to go above that. And Brad Marchand wanted more than that.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Like, I feel like we won't be able to give the final grade or the final summary of this entire saga until we get to the offseason. We figure out where Marchand signs and, for most importantly, how much, right? Because as soon as, like, listen, I think the initial reaction is one that's still like, man, if you're going to move your captain, a guy that's been ingrained in the culture here, you want more for that, even if it's a pending free agent. Because, I mean, you look at what the Flyers got for Giroux, who, like, I always felt like when they traded Giroux, he was like 31. Like, he was still like a guy that's been in the league for so long. He was like 34. So I was like, all right, if you get an Owen Tippett, a first and a third, it's a pretty good bit of business. You look at what the Bruins gave up to get Rick Nash, who is 33 on his last legs, unfortunately, because of injury. So I do think it's unfortunate for the Bruins that if you are going to rip the Band-Aid off, you only get a conditional 2027 pick that maybe becomes a first, but there's two conditions on top of it. Like, I wish there was just one involved. Like, you need the Panthers to essentially get to the Eastern Conference Finals, and Marchand has to play 50% of the games, which, if he's healthy, I'd rather just be the condition instead of like, hey, if shit goes haywire and a Panthers team that's been to 2 cups in a row comes up short against a good Toronto team or a good Tampa team, like, them's are the breaks, right? Like, so I don't like that there's two conditions on top of it. Again, I think a lot, unfortunately, was not working in the Bruins' favor in terms of the Marchand injury. I think if he was healthy, you're probably getting more. You're either getting a locked-in first-round pick, even if it means one down the road in 27. When, like, you first hear it's the Panthers and it took forever for us to get the news, I'm like, are they getting, like Mackie Samskevich, however you say his name, like a young winger?
Samskevich.
Yeah, yes. Are you getting a guy like that? My first, like, thought was, like, are they getting, like, fucking Lundell or something? Which I know is insane, but, like,
I agree.
When you first see those moves, you just start, like, racing as to what the thing is. Same with, like, Toronto. I'm like, when they got Carl, I'm like, Matthew Nyes is way too good to be an actual trade chip now. And I know that sounds ridiculous because he's a beast, but it's like you're just trying to rack your brain.
Well, even like when the rumors,
guys have.
When the Marchand to LA rumors, people were like, could it be Quentin Byfield coming back? Could it be Byfield? And you're like, for a second, you're like, wait a minute, could it? Like, actually, could it?
And again, like, who knows if Marchand's healthy? Like, you have stuff working against you if you're the Bruins in terms of the injury, which I think hampered the outright value, and the fact that I think the Bruins did right. They wanted to do right by Marchand in terms of giving him a say, and he wanted to be on the East Coast, so that takes out a team like Vegas, takes out a team like the Kings, and again, remains to be seen what the Kings would have given up, but I think they have 2 first-round picks, or they have their own this year. They've got Byfield, which, again, I don't know if that measures out, but even like a guy like Brent Clark, who's been a rumored trade chip for a while, like, that's a good piece for a offensively gifted right shot D. So they probably had more assets, but if you're going to do right by Marchand, putting him in a spot where he wants to go, and you add in the fact that he's banged up, and even if he's back in 3 to 4 weeks, it seems like it's definitely not concussion. I've heard that it's like shoulder, something like that, which, again, you can be back for the playoffs, but that also does not magically heal. It's still going to be not 100%. So, the actual return is unfortunate. It's unfortunate, in a situation where you don't have Marchand finishing his career, but I do feel like we're not going to get the full grade until we figure out what Marchand does this offseason. Because if he goes somewhere else and signs a 3-year deal at 3-year, $21 million contract from the Bruins, I'm like, well, this sucks, but I don't want to be the team giving him that much money, especially when it's guaranteed. If his legs give out or his, can't play any further, they still have that money on the books. So I can see why they didn't want to do that. If he goes and re-ups with the Panthers for 3 years at $9 million, I'm not too happy about that because I think you'd rather keep him. But I do think when you look at what Friedman mentioned, I tend to, from what I've been hearing, believe more it's along that side of things in terms of it. The Bruins weren't like, I saw it as soon as like Marchand got traded. There was reports that it was like a $3 million per year contract.
I saw that.
Weren't any higher than that. I'm like, if that's the case, I can't believe that didn't. Yeah, I can't believe that was going to be the holdup. Nor would I think the Bruins lowball him to that degree, right? And so,
take the Red Sox with Lester back in the day,
right? So again, if that changes and we get to free agency and see what happens, that's a tough look. But again, there's a lot of things go into it. Is someone going to sign him to that contract and Marchand doesn't play at all in this playoffs, or he's really ineffective? Like, how he does moving forward and what he ends up signing, I think, is how you give the final grade. So it's unfortunate that the Bruins weren't able to keep him, weren't able to, get a common ground. But if you're the Bruins, and unfortunately, if you have to look towards the future, I'm not saying that like it was a necessary evil to get rid of a true Bruin through and through in Marchand, but if you're also trying to maximize your cap space, yeah, you'd love to have Marchand back on the Bergeron and Chard deal, or hell, at a discounted rate. But if you are willing to give him, his current payout, and he wanted more, and that already is like taxing what is already cap space you have to make the most of right now, I could see why the Bruins had to draw a line in the sand. It sucks, but it's kind of the same as like what Tampa is right now. They caught a lot of flack for letting Stamkos go, but did you want to be the guy paying him $8 million a year? So again, it sucks. It sucks, but also let's just see where all parties are in July in terms of what Marchand's getting on the market.
I agree. I also think with Marchand, it's interesting because yes, they didn't get enough.
Yes.
But they did get something. And I know there are a lot of fans out there who think, and I understand this because it's Brad Marchand, just keep him. Just keep him the rest of the year. And I understand that. I completely get that. And I don't hate that because a conditional second is just a second. And we like second round picks. But for Brad Marchand, that is ridiculously low. But there is the other side of it too, where it's like if they had just kept him after trading Carlo and Coyle, we would go, well, all right, you're not re-signing him. Or there's no announcement of an extension. Why did you hold on to him? Like, what was the reason? And Don Sweeney's not going to come out and go, well, the Kings didn't offer enough, or the Panthers didn't offer enough. Like, so we would be sitting here and going, why did you keep him? Like, you're clearly entering a 2 or 3 year retool. He isn't signed. He's going to walk in the offseason potentially. Why did you keep him? And there's the other end of it too, where it's like, if, I saw some people say, well, if you kept him around, maybe you find common ground in the next couple months for a contract. And maybe you do, but you haven't found common ground up to now at all. Clearly, like there was no progress made from the beginning of the season until now, which is early March. What makes you think in April or May or June or July, you're suddenly going to come to the table and say, I've had an epiphany. We're going to offer you the exact deal you want. Or he says, I'm going to come down to your deal. It's not going to happen. So I just, that's where I'm conflicted, because it's like, yeah, you didn't get enough, but you did get something. And it's funny because this idea of him coming back in free agency, I've laughed at, but I've heard legitimate hockey people mention that. Like older hockey people who've been around and experienced. I had an agent mention it to me who's like, I'm not saying that he's involved at all. He's not. But he did mention that. And I was like, that's interesting. I can't believe people actually think this, but enough people do and have said it where I'm like, maybe. I mean, you saw how broken up he was. I'm not saying I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't be stunned by it. And like there was that the clip on Monday, right before Twitter went down for a bit, on NFL Free Agents Day of all things, which like,
of course, good shit, everyone.
Good job, Elon. But there was the clip of Marchand's introductory press conference, and he's getting all broken up about Sweeney and Neely and the Bruins and being here and how he wanted to be here. I mean, I don't know what's going to happen over the next 3 months, but I don't know. Maybe I wouldn't be shocked if he came back. Maybe he goes and sees another place and says, no, I want to be there, whatever the price is. Like, I'll come down to you. I just want to be in Boston. Now, I don't know. And I would be shocked if that, not shocked. I don't think that's going to happen, but maybe I wouldn't be shocked if it did.